She asked him to fix a gate. The rancher never expected the truth behind her words. His days began before sunrise, with the soft glow of the morning light spilling over the hills. The smell of fresh earth and hay was always present, a comfort that reminded him that life, though hard, was honest and steady. He liked it that way. He liked the quiet, the routine, and the sense of control that came from knowing his land like the back of his hand. Every fence post, every gate, every stretch of grazing field was familiar to him, and that familiarity gave him a feeling of safety that he had rarely found anywhere else. On that particular morning, the air was crisp but not cold, carrying a faint scent of wildflowers that had begun to bloom near the edge of the property. John had just finished checking on the northern herd, making sure none of the cattle had wandered too close to the creek. As he walked back toward the barn, he noticed something unusual, a figure standing near the edge of the property line. At first, he thought it might be one of the ranch hands or a neighbor's child who had wandered too far, but as he got closer, he realized it was a woman he did not know. She was standing hesitantly, as if unsure whether she should speak or leave. Her posture was polite, almost timid, and she held herself in a way that suggested she respected the boundaries of his property. John slowed his steps, instinctively cautious but not hostile. Over the years, he had learned to be wary of strangers on his land, but something about her presence felt different. She did not carry the hurried urgency of someone trying to cause trouble, nor the careless confidence of someone looking to take advantage. She seemed nervous yet respectful. "Hello," she said softly when she noticed him approaching. Her voice was calm, almost shy, and there was a hint of relief in her tone. "I'm sorry to bother you. My name is Clara. I live on the neighboring ranch. I was wondering if you could help me with something." John studied her for a moment. He had seen many people come and go in his life, and most requests were simple or sometimes unnecessary. But there was a sincerity in her eyes that caught his attention. "What kind of help do you need?" he asked, his voice steady but cautious. She took a small step forward, clearly gathering courage to speak. "There's a gate on our property near the fence that borders your land. It's broken, and I don't know how to fix it properly. I was hoping, maybe you could take a look. I know it might be inconvenient, and I understand if you're busy." John felt a familiar sense of responsibility rise in him. Helping neighbors was part of the unspoken rules of the ranching community. People often relied on one another for small favors like this, and sometimes even larger ones. Yet, he had also learned to balance kindness with caution. "I can take a look," he said finally. "It's no problem, but I'll need to finish a few things here first." Clara nodded, relief washing over her face. "Thank you. I really appreciate it. I didn't want to bother you, but I didn't know who else to ask." As John gathered his tools and made his way toward the gate, he couldn't help but notice the unease in her posture. There was something unspoken in her words, a subtle tension that suggested the broken gate was more than just a simple problem. Yet, he pushed the thought aside, focusing on the task at hand. Fixing a gate was a routine job for him, something he could do with skill and efficiency. He told himself it was best to keep the interaction light and professional until he knew more. The gate itself was old, made of sturdy wood and reinforced with metal hinges that had seen many years of weather and wear. It leaned slightly to one side, a clear sign that it had been neglected or damaged recently. As he examined it, John could see why Clara had come to him. He had a reputation in the area for fixing things properly, and he took pride in his work. Every gate, fence, or structure he maintained on his land was secure, reliable, and built to last. This gate, he realized, needed careful attention, not just a quick repair. While he worked, he noticed Clara standing quietly nearby, watching but not interfering. She did not hover or offer unhelpful suggestions. Instead, she seemed content to give him space while still being present. John found himself observing her as much as he observed the gate. There was a gentleness in her demeanor, a quiet patience that reminded him of the calm mornings on the ranch when everything seemed to pause for a moment. It was rare to encounter someone who did not rush or demand, and he felt a subtle respect for her approach. As he tightened screws and adjusted the hinges, he began to engage in small conversation, testing the waters for further understanding. "Do you live around here often?" he asked casually. "Yes," Clara replied. "My family's ranch has been in our family for generations. I grew up here. It's peaceful, but sometimes managing everything alone can be overwhelming." She paused for a moment, her gaze shifting toward the horizon. "I didn't expect anyone to be around to help today." John nodded, understanding more than she might have realized. Life on a ranch was often lonely, demanding, and full of responsibilities that never seemed to end. One could manage cattle, fences, crops, and machinery, but when it came to human support, people had to rely on neighbors or friends. He felt a small connection forming, a quiet acknowledgement that they shared an understanding of hard work and responsibility. Minutes turned into hours as John carefully repaired the gate. He ensured that the hinges were secure, the wood reinforced, and the structure stable enough to withstand strong winds or heavy use. All the while, Clara remained nearby, sometimes offering a word of thanks, sometimes silently observing. There was a calm tension in the air, a sense that something significant lay behind her request. John couldn't quite place it, but he sensed that this was more than a casual favor. Finally, as the sun began its descent and the shadows stretched across the fields, John stepped back to inspect his work. The gate now stood firm and straight, ready to serve its purpose for many years to come. Clara's expression shifted from nervousness to gratitude, a warmth in her eyes that reflected relief and appreciation. "It's perfect," she said softly. "Thank you so much. I don't know what I would have done without your help today." John smiled, feeling a quiet satisfaction in his work. He had come to expect gratitude from neighbors, but there was something deeper in her words, a sense of genuine relief that hinted at a story he had not yet been told. "I'm glad I could help," he replied. "Just make sure to keep it maintained. Gates like this need care, or they won't last long." As he packed up his tools and prepared to return to his own ranch, John couldn't shake the feeling that this encounter was the beginning of something more. Clara had come with a simple request, but the weight of her words, her presence, and the subtle emotion she carried suggested that the broken gate was only the surface of a deeper situation. John knew that life on the ranch often brought unexpected challenges, and sometimes helping others revealed stories and struggles that one could never anticipate. He waved goodbye, and Clara returned a small, grateful smile. The sun was dipping below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink. John walked back to his own land, reflecting on the unusual day. The quiet of the ranch surrounded him once more, yet it no longer felt entirely the same. There was now a story lingering in his mind, a hint of mystery behind a simple favor. And deep down, he felt a quiet determination to understand it, even if it meant stepping beyond the familiar comfort of his routine life. For John, the day began like any other, with routine, work, and solitude. But it had ended with something new. The sense that small acts of kindness could open doors to unexpected truths, and that even a simple request could reveal layers of human experience he had not yet encountered. As night fell, he looked out over the darkened fields, the stars beginning to twinkle in the sky. Somewhere nearby, Clara's ranch waited, and the memory of her words lingered. A broken gate had brought them together, but he sensed it was only the start of a story far greater than the work of fixing wood and metal. And John, the quiet, steady rancher, felt ready for whatever truth lay behind her words, knowing that sometimes life's most important lessons began with a simple act of help. After fixing the gate, John returned to his routine work on the ranch, but something about Clara's presence lingered in his mind. He went through the motions of checking the cattle, feeding the animals, and inspecting fences, yet his thoughts kept drifting back to her. There was something different about her, something he couldn't quite put into words. He realized that the simple request for help had left an impression deeper than he expected. Most neighbors came and went with brief words of thanks, but Clara's quiet intensity, her careful choice of words, and the nervous tension in her eyes suggested that her life was more complicated than he could see at first glance. The next morning, as John was repairing a fence near the barn, he noticed a faint shadow moving near the edge of the property. At first, he thought it might be a stray animal, but then he recognized the familiar figure of Clara approaching again. She walked with a mix of hesitation and determination, holding herself with quiet purpose. John paused and wiped the sweat from his forehead. "Morning," he said, trying to sound casual. "Is everything all right?" Clara hesitated before speaking. I just wanted to thank you again for yesterday. I know it was a lot to ask, and I didn't mean to trouble you." Her voice was soft, but there was an underlying tension, as if she had more to say but wasn't sure how to start. John nodded, sensing that her visit might go beyond a simple thank you. "You're welcome," he replied. "It's no trouble at all. You don't need to apologize for asking." He leaned against the fence, studying her carefully. He could see that her eyes carried more than gratitude. They were filled with concern, maybe even worry. John had learned over the years that people often carried burdens quietly, and he wondered what story lay behind hers. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The wind rustled the leaves of nearby trees, and the distant lowing of cattle created a calm, almost meditative background. Clara finally broke the silence. "It's just my brother," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. She paused, biting her lip as if unsure whether to continue. He ran away yesterday. We had an argument and he just left. I don't know where he went and I'm worried about him." John's eyebrows rose slightly. He had suspected there was more behind her visit, but hearing her speak so openly caught him off guard. He had seen families in trouble before, had witnessed arguments that escalated into long periods of silence or even danger. He felt a surge of empathy for her. "I see," he said carefully. "Do you know where he might have gone? Any place he usually goes when he's upset?" Clara shook her head. "No, he sometimes wanders around the neighboring fields, or he might go down by the creek. He's stubborn, but he's also careful. I don't want him to get hurt, and I didn't know who else to ask for help." She looked at him with pleading eyes, the earlier politeness replaced by an earnest worry that tugged at John's heart. John nodded slowly. "We can figure this out," he said. "I can help you search for him, or at least keep an eye out while he's out there. But you'll have to tell me more about him, so I know what to look for." Clara's shoulders relaxed slightly, as if a weight had been lifted by his words. As she spoke about her brother, John listened carefully. He learned that he was a young man in his late teens, adventurous but sometimes careless. He loved the outdoors, spending hours exploring the hills and valleys near their ranch, often ignoring rules and boundaries in the process. Clara explained that their parents had passed away a few years ago, leaving her with the responsibility of managing the family ranch and looking after her younger brother. She admitted that it was not easy. She loved him dearly, but the pressure of maintaining the land and ensuring his safety often felt overwhelming. John could see the strain on her face as she spoke. There was a combination of responsibility, worry, and exhaustion in her expression that reminded him of the many long days he had spent on his own ranch, balancing work and solitude. Yet, despite her struggles, there was also a resilience in her. She had stepped forward to seek help, even though it was difficult for her to admit she couldn't manage everything alone. That, John realized, took courage. After listening to her story, John offered practical suggestions. "We should check the areas he usually goes. Start with the creek and the old barn near the edge of your property. If he's not there, We can expand the search to the neighboring hills. Also keep an eye on the roads he might take. Sometimes he wanders farther than we expect." Clara nodded, grateful for his guidance, and together they set off toward the areas he suggested. The search was not easy. The morning sun climbed higher, casting long shadows across the fields, and the ground was uneven and filled with obstacles. John and Clara moved carefully, calling out her brother's name in a calm, steady voice. The cattle shifted nervously at their approach, but John's presence reassured them. He had always understood animals as well as humans, and he used that same patience to navigate the fields and guide Clara through the search. As they walked, Clara opened up more, telling John about her childhood on the ranch, the responsibilities she had taken on after losing her parents, and the occasional moments of joy and laughter she shared with her brother. Her stories painted a picture of a life that was both challenging and beautiful, filled with hard work, small victories, and the constant need to care for someone else. John listened, not interrupting, allowing her to share her experiences in her own time. Hours passed and there was still no sign of her brother. The worry in Clara's eyes grew, but John remained calm. He understood that panic would not help and that the key was persistence and patience. He encouraged her to keep searching, reminding her that her brother knew the land well and would likely be found close to familiar areas. His steady presence gave her a sense of support she hadn't felt in days. During a break near a small grove of trees, Clara paused and looked at John. "Thank you for helping me," she said, her voice filled with genuine emotion. "I didn't expect a stranger to care so much about something that's my responsibility." "Most people would have just said no or ignored me." John smiled slightly. "We all need help sometimes," he replied. "Life on the ranch isn't easy for anyone. You're doing your best, and asking for help doesn't make you weak. It makes you smart." Clara nodded, feeling a small sense of reassurance in his words. As the day continued, John noticed small details that helped guide the search. A broken branch here, a set of footprints there, and a few signs that her brother had passed through recently. Each clue brought a mix of hope and anxiety, as they followed the trail carefully, never knowing if it would lead to him or to a dead end. John's experience with the land gave him an advantage. He could read the subtle signs left behind by someone moving through the fields, and he used that skill to lead Clara efficiently. Finally, as the afternoon sun began to lower in the sky, they found him. He was sitting near the creek, staring at the water, lost in thought. When he saw them approaching, he initially tried to act defiant, but the worry and exhaustion on Clara's face broke through his resistance. He got up quietly and she ran toward him, relief and emotion flooding her expression. John stayed back for a moment, giving them space while observing their reunion. He felt a quiet satisfaction, knowing that his help had made a difference. The tension that had hovered over Clara for the past day lifted slightly, replaced by the warmth of relief and the bond of family. On the walk back to her ranch, Clara held her brother's hand tightly, talking softly to him, while John followed behind. He reflected on the day's events, realizing that what had begun as a simple request to fix a gate had turned into a meaningful connection, a lesson in empathy, patience, and understanding. Sometimes, he thought, people carry burdens quietly, and a small act of help can reveal stories and challenges that are much deeper than anyone expects. By the time they returned to her ranch, the sun was setting, painting the sky in beautiful shades of orange and pink. Clara thanked John again, this time with a sense of gratitude that went beyond words. She had not only found her brother, but had also discovered a trusted ally, someone who understood the difficulties she faced and had been willing to help without judgment. John left her ranch that evening with a quiet sense of fulfillment. The day had reminded him of an important truth. Life often brings unexpected challenges, and even small gestures of kindness can have a profound impact. He returned to his own land. the stars beginning to twinkle in the darkening sky, reflecting on the unexpected depth behind a simple request. The broken gate, he realized, had been only the beginning, opening the door to a story of care, responsibility, and the quiet strength of people who face life's struggles with courage. As he settled in for the night, John thought about Clara and her brother. He knew that tomorrow would bring its own challenges, but he felt ready for them, strengthened by the knowledge that helping others often leads to understanding, trust, and connections that last far longer than the moment itself. The next morning, John awoke with the sun streaming through the small window of his farmhouse. The events of the previous day were still fresh in his mind. What had started as a simple request to fix a gate had quickly turned into a search for Clara's brother. The encounter had left a lasting impression on him. Her courage, her sense of responsibility, and the quiet determination to handle a difficult situation all struck a chord within him. He knew that today might bring something new, something unexpected, but he felt prepared to face it. After feeding the cattle and checking the fences, John made his way back toward the area where Clara's ranch connected to his land. He wanted to ensure that everything was in order and that her brother was safe. As he approached, he saw Clara waiting near the repaired gate. Her expression was serious but calm, and when she noticed him, she gave a small nod. It was clear that she had something important to share, something that weighed heavily on her mind. "Good morning, John," she said softly. "Thank you for coming again. I need to tell you something about my brother." Her voice was steady, but there was an underlying tension, a hint that what she was about to say was not easy for her. John listened attentively, leaning on the fence as he waited for her to continue. Clara took a deep breath. "Yesterday, when he ran away, I realized that it wasn't just an argument that made him leave. He's been carrying a burden, something he hasn't shared with anyone. I didn't know how serious it was until yesterday. I think he's scared and I don't know what to do." Her hands trembled slightly as she spoke, betraying the calm tone she tried to maintain. John could see the genuine worry in her eyes, and he felt a surge of empathy. He understood the feeling of being responsible for someone else, especially someone who could get into trouble without realizing it. "Do you know what's troubling him?" John asked gently. "Or is it still unclear?" Clara shook her head. "I'm not sure. He's been quiet for weeks, avoiding conversations and spending more time alone. I thought it was normal teenage moodiness, but yesterday I saw how deep it really went. He's worried about the family ranch, about failing me, about losing something important." She hesitated, searching for the right words. "I think he's afraid that he's not capable of handling things on his own, that he's letting everyone down." John nodded thoughtfully. He had seen this before, young people who carried burdens silently, feeling responsible for things beyond their control. It was a heavy weight for anyone to bear, especially for someone so young. "We'll find a way to help him," he said. "It's not something he has to face alone." With that understanding, they decided to visit the places her brother often went when he needed space. They walked through familiar fields, past the creek, and toward the old barn at the edge of the property. John noticed small signs along the way, footprints in the soft soil, broken twigs, and flattened grass where someone had been resting. Each sign told a story, revealing not only that he had been there, but also hints of his emotional state, hesitation, anxiety, and a longing for reassurance. As they approached the old barn, John noticed a subtle change in Clara. Her posture stiffened, and she paused, staring at the building as if she could see the past unfold before her eyes. John understood that this barn held memories for her brother, memories of childhood, of time spent together, and perhaps even moments of comfort during difficult times. He respected the unspoken significance of the place and allowed Clara to lead the way. Inside the barn, the air was cooler, carrying the scent of hay and aged wood. Clara's brother was there, sitting on an old crate, staring at the floor. When he saw them, he did not immediately speak. His eyes were filled with a mixture of defiance and fear, emotions that Clara had hoped to help him navigate. She knelt beside him, her voice gentle but firm. "I'm not angry," she said. "I just want to understand. I want to help you, but I need you to trust me." He looked up at her, the tension in his face softening slightly, but his gaze remained distant. John, standing quietly nearby, observed without interrupting. He could sense the internal struggle, the fear of admitting weakness, the worry of disappointing someone he cared about, and the uncertainty of sharing his true feelings. It was a delicate moment, and he knew that any sudden action could make things worse. After a few minutes, the young man finally spoke, his voice low and hesitant. "I don't want to fail. I don't want to let anyone down. I feel like I'm not strong enough to handle everything. I'm scared I'll make mistakes and ruin things." His words hung in the air, raw and vulnerable. John felt a surge of respect for the honesty in his confession. It took courage to speak the truth, especially when fear and pride were so tightly intertwined. Clara reached out, placing a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "You're not alone," she said softly. "We're a team. We all make mistakes, but that doesn't mean you're failing. We'll face challenges together, and I'll be here to support you." Her words seemed to reach him, as he finally allowed himself to relax slightly, the weight of his fears lessened by her presence and understanding. John stepped forward and spoke in his calm, steady voice. "Life on the ranch is never easy, but it's not something you have to face by yourself. Everyone struggles at times, even those who seem strong. What matters is that you keep trying, that you ask for help when you need it, and that you don't give up. You're capable of more than you realize." The young man looked at John, absorbing his words. There was a spark of understanding in his eyes, a recognition that strength was not about facing challenges alone, but about knowing when to seek support. He nodded slowly, a quiet acceptance forming within him. For the first time in days, he felt the possibility of relief from the burden he had carried silently. Clara smiled softly, grateful for John's presence. She realized that this experience was teaching her something important as well, that vulnerability could be met with compassion, and that seeking help was not a sign of weakness, but of strength. Together, they began to talk about practical steps to address the challenges facing the family ranch, ways to divide responsibilities, and strategies to prevent similar situations in the future. John suggested small but meaningful adjustments, reorganizing chores, setting aside time for open communication, and creating safe spaces for sharing concerns. Clara's brother listened attentively, slowly beginning to understand that he was not alone in managing the responsibilities of their land. The fear that had dominated him was gradually replaced by a cautious optimism, a sense that with guidance and support, he could face the challenges ahead. As the afternoon sun streamed through the barn's open doors, John noticed a change in the atmosphere. The tension that had been present earlier was dissipating, replaced by a quiet sense of hope. The young man stood taller, his expression more relaxed, and Clara's face reflected relief and gratitude. John felt a deep satisfaction in witnessing this transformation, knowing that a simple act of listening and guiding could have such a profound effect. Before leaving, John took a moment to reflect on the events of the day. What had begun as a simple request to fix a gate had become a journey of understanding, empathy, and connection. He realized that the true value of helping someone was not just in completing a task, but in being present, listening carefully, and offering guidance when it was needed most. Small acts of support could lead to significant changes in someone's life, often in ways that were not immediately visible. Clara and her brother walked with John toward the repaired gate, their steps lighter and their conversation more open. The young man began to share more about his dreams, fears, and ambitions, feeling safer knowing that he had people who cared and would support him. Clara's gratitude was evident, not only for John's help, but for the understanding and guidance he had provided. The bond between them had strengthened, built on trust, respect, and shared experience. By the time John returned to his own ranch, the sun was beginning to set, casting a warm, golden light across the fields. He paused for a moment, looking out over his land, reflecting on the unexpected lessons of the day. Life, he realized, often revealed its deepest truths through small, seemingly ordinary moments. A broken gate, a request for help, and the courage to speak honestly had opened the door to understanding, connection, and growth. As night fell, John settled into his routine with a renewed sense of purpose. He understood that challenges were an inevitable part of life, but that facing them with empathy, patience, and willingness to help others could transform ordinary experiences into meaningful, lasting memories. The events of the day had reminded him of the quiet strength of human connection and the profound impact of simple acts of kindness. The story of Clara and her brother was far from over, but John felt confident that they would navigate the challenges ahead together. He knew that the journey would involve difficult decisions, hard work, and ongoing support, but he also knew that the bonds formed through understanding and empathy would endure. And he carried with him the knowledge that sometimes life's most significant lessons began with a single step, the courage to ask for help and the willingness to answer that call. Over the following days, life on the ranch settled into a new rhythm. Clara and her brother began to work together more openly, and John found himself visiting occasionally, offering guidance and support when needed. What had started as a simple act of repairing a gate had evolved into something much deeper. John watched quietly as the family grew stronger, learning how to communicate, to trust, and to share responsibilities in ways that brought relief to both Clara and her brother. Clara's brother, once hesitant and anxious, started to take more initiative. He repaired small fences, tended to the animals, and even helped with chores that had previously been left entirely to his sister. John noticed the change in him. The nervous tension had been replaced by quiet confidence. It was clear that the young man was beginning to understand the value of responsibility, not as a burden, but as a way to contribute meaningfully to his family and the land they cared for. One morning, John arrived at the ranch to find Clara working alongside her brother, mending a section of fence that had been weakened by the recent rains. She looked up as he approached, a warm smile crossing her face. "Good morning, John," she called. "We've made progress already. Look at him. He's even taking the lead on fixing this fence." Her brother glanced up briefly, offering a shy nod before returning to the work. John felt a quiet sense of pride, not just for the young man but for Clara as well. She had taken on the responsibility of guiding her brother with patience and care, and her efforts were paying off. "You two are doing well," John said, his voice calm and encouraging. "It's great to see you working together. Keep it up." As the days passed, John continued to offer practical guidance. He showed them how to reinforce fences properly, repair gates efficiently, and manage the land in ways that would prevent problems before they arose. But he also focused on something more important, teaching them the value of communication, patience, and teamwork. He emphasized that mistakes were part of the learning process, and that facing challenges together made them easier to handle. Clara and her brother gradually began to open up more. They shared stories about their parents, their childhood, and the struggles they had faced since taking on the ranch. Through these conversations, John gained a deeper understanding of their lives, the love they had for each other, the sense of duty that sometimes felt overwhelming, and the small victories that made their days meaningful. He realized that his role was not just as a helper or mentor, but as a supportive presence who could guide them without taking over. One afternoon, as they worked near the creek, Clara's brother paused and looked at John. "I never realized how much there was to learn about the ranch," he said quietly. I thought I knew it all, but I see now that there's more to take care of than I thought. And I understand now that asking for help doesn't make me weak." John smiled, recognizing the growth in his words. "Exactly," he said. "No one can do everything alone. Asking for help is a sign of strength, and it's how we grow. You've already made progress, and you'll continue to get better with experience and support." The young man nodded, a sense of determination replacing the hesitation that had once held him back. Clara watched the interaction with a quiet sense of relief. She had worried for so long about her brother's future and her ability to manage everything on her own. Now, seeing him take initiative, listen carefully, and learn from guidance, she felt a sense of hope she hadn't experienced in years. The tension that had hovered over the ranch seemed to lift, replaced by a newfound sense of harmony and cooperation. As the weeks went on, John noticed other changes as well. The ranch itself began to reflect the improved teamwork. Fences were stronger, gates were repaired more efficiently, and the animals were better cared for. There was a sense of order and stability that had been missing before. But more importantly, there was a change in the atmosphere. The quiet tension of worry and responsibility was replaced by collaboration, understanding, and mutual respect. One evening, as the sun set over the fields, John sat on the porch of his own ranch, reflecting on the journey so far. He thought about the day Clara had first approached him, asking for help with a broken gate. At the time, it had seemed like a simple favor, but it had become so much more. That small act of kindness had opened the door to trust, connection, and transformation. He realized that sometimes the smallest requests could lead to the most meaningful changes in people's lives. Clara and her brother also experienced personal growth during this time. Clara learned to trust others and accept help, recognizing that she did not have to carry every burden alone. Her brother learned to take responsibility, communicate openly, and face challenges with confidence. Together, they discovered that working as a team not only made the ranch more successful, but also strengthened their relationship and their ability to face life's difficulties. John's presence continued to be a steady influence. He offered guidance when necessary, but allowed them space to learn and grow independently. He encouraged them to think critically, solve problems creatively, and support one another through both successes and failures. His approach was simple but effective: patience, encouragement, and leading by example. Over time, the lessons he shared became part of their daily lives, shaping the way they approached challenges and responsibilities. One day, Clara's brother approached John with a question about maintaining a section of fencing that had been particularly troublesome. "I think I understand how to fix it, but can you show me a better way to do it?" he asked. John smiled, impressed by the initiative. "Of course," he replied. "Let's go through it step by step, and I'll show you a method that makes it easier and stronger." As they worked together, John observed the confidence in the young man's movements, the careful attention to detail, the willingness to learn, and the growing sense of pride in his accomplishments. Clara watched them, a quiet smile on her face. She realized that the transformation she had hoped for was happening, not just in the physical improvements to the ranch, but in the personal growth of her brother. He was becoming more capable, more responsible, and more confident in himself. And she knew that this change would have a lasting impact on their family and the ranch they cared for so deeply. As the day ended, John prepared to leave, but not before offering one final piece of advice. "Remember," he said, "the ranch will always have challenges, but the important thing is how you face them. Work together, communicate, and don't be afraid to ask for help. You'll find that even the hardest problems become manageable when you approach them with patience and teamwork." Clara nodded, her eyes reflecting gratitude and understanding. "We will, John. Thank you for everything. You've taught us more than just how to fix fences and gates. You've taught us how to trust, to work together, and to believe in ourselves." Her brother also nodded, a quiet but sincere acknowledgement of the lessons he had learned and the guidance he had received. As John walked back to his own ranch that evening, he reflected on the changes he had witnessed. The broken gate had been only the beginning, a doorway to growth, understanding, and personal transformation. What had started as a simple act of help had become a journey of learning, resilience, and strengthened bonds. He realized that sometimes the greatest lessons in life came from small, everyday moments, moments of connection, understanding, and quiet guidance. By the time the stars began to appear in the night sky, John felt a deep sense of fulfillment. He had witnessed the growth of two people, the restoration of a sense of balance on a ranch, and the strengthening of relationships that would endure long into the future. The experience had reminded him that life's most meaningful changes often came not from grand gestures, but from consistent, thoughtful support and the willingness to guide others through challenges with patience and care. And so, the ranch, once weighed down by worry and uncertainty, now flourished not only in its physical upkeep, but in the strength and resilience of those who cared for it. Clara and her brother had learned to face challenges together, to trust one another, and to embrace growth through experience. John, too, carried with him the knowledge that even the smallest acts of kindness and guidance could transform lives in ways that were lasting and profound. The weeks that followed brought a sense of calm and stability to Clara's ranch. The tension that had once shadowed her and her brother gradually lifted, replaced by cooperation, trust, and shared responsibility. Life on a ranch was never simple, and challenges continued to arise. The weather was unpredictable, animals needed constant care, and fences and gates required constant maintenance. But the difference now was the way the family faced these challenges together. John continued to visit occasionally, offering guidance when necessary, but the bond they had formed went beyond instruction. It was a relationship built on trust, respect, and genuine care. Clara's brother, once hesitant and anxious, had grown into a more confident young man. He now took the initiative on many tasks, making decisions about the ranch with clarity and thoughtfulness. He no longer avoided responsibilities or hid his worries. Instead, he shared them openly with Clara, seeking her advice when needed. Their communication improved, and with it, the ranch itself began to flourish. Fences were strong, gates were secure, and the cattle were well tended. But more importantly, the family was thriving in ways that went beyond the physical upkeep of the land. One morning, John arrived to find Clara and her brother working side by side to repair a section of fence damaged by a recent storm. They greeted him warmly, their smiles genuine and filled with gratitude. "Good morning, John," Clara called. "We've been working hard and it's paying off. Look at him, he's learning fast and taking charge." Her brother nodded, a small grin on his face. "I've been paying attention," he said modestly. "I think I finally understand how to handle things better." John felt a quiet pride as he watched them. He remembered the first day he had met Clara, the nervous young woman standing by a broken gate, asking for help, and the journey that had followed. That small request had led to so much more: trust, understanding, growth, and connection. It reminded him that life often revealed its deepest lessons in the simplest moments, and that small acts of kindness could create ripples far beyond what anyone could expect. As they worked together, Clara paused and looked around at the progress they had made. "It feels different now," she said softly. "I don't feel as overwhelmed. I know my brother and I can manage this together, and I know that we have people like you, John, who are willing to guide us when needed. It makes a big difference." John nodded, appreciating her words. "You've done the hard part yourselves," he said. "I just helped show you a way forward. The real strength comes from within both of you and from the way you support each other." Clara's brother spoke up, his voice steady. "I understand that now. I realize that it's okay to ask for help, and it doesn't mean I'm weak. It means I'm learning and growing. I feel more confident about handling the ranch and facing challenges. I'm grateful for everything you've taught us, John." Hearing these words, John felt a sense of fulfillment that went beyond satisfaction in a job well done. The young man's growth, his newfound confidence, and the strengthened bond between him and his sister were tangible reminders of the impact of compassion, guidance, and patience. He knew that life would continue to present difficulties, but he also knew that Clara and her brother were now better equipped to face them together. Over the next few weeks, John continued to observe the improvements on the ranch. Work that once took hours was completed more efficiently, and the overall atmosphere was lighter and more positive. Clara and her brother had developed routines, divided responsibilities fairly, and learned to communicate openly about challenges and solutions. Their interactions were no longer filled with tension or anxiety. Instead, there was a sense of shared purpose and mutual respect. One evening, after a long day of work, the three of them sat on the porch of Clara's ranch, watching the sun dip below the hills. The sky was painted in shades of orange and pink, and the field stretched endlessly in every direction. Clara leaned back in her chair, a soft smile on her face, while her brother rested beside her, looking relaxed and content. John sat quietly, observing the peaceful scene, feeling the calm that had settled over the ranch. "You know," Clara said, breaking the silence, "I never expected that asking for help with a gate would lead to all of this. It's strange to think that one small action could change so much in our lives." John smiled, understanding the truth in her words. "Sometimes life works that way," he said. "The smallest actions can have the biggest impact. A simple request, a kind word, or a helping hand can open doors to understanding, growth, and connection. You both embrace the opportunity, and that's why things have changed." Her brother nodded in agreement. "I've learned that it's okay to lean on others, to ask questions, and to accept guidance. I feel stronger now, not because I do everything perfectly, but because I know I don't have to do it alone." The trio sat together in comfortable silence for a while, reflecting on the journey they had taken. John thought about the countless people who faced challenges in silence, unsure whether to seek help or trust others. He realized that the courage to reach out, combined with the willingness to listen and guide, could transform lives in ways that were both immediate and lasting. As night fell and stars began to twinkle in the sky, Clara's brother stood and stretched, a sense of pride evident in his posture. "We'll continue to work hard and we'll keep learning," he said. "And when challenges arise, we'll face them together. We'll remember the lessons we've learned and the help we've received." Clara smiled, feeling a sense of hope and determination. "We'll be okay," she said. "We've come a long way and we've learned that we're stronger together." "I'm grateful for your guidance, John, and for helping us see that." John stood, feeling a sense of closure and satisfaction. "You've done the hard work yourselves," he said. "I just helped show the path. The rest is up to you, and I'm confident that you'll handle it well. Remember, growth comes step by step, and the strength you've built will guide you through anything." As he walked back to his own ranch, John reflected on the journey that had begun with a simple request to fix a gate. That single act had led to a series of events that changed lives, strengthened bonds, and taught valuable lessons about responsibility, trust, and the power of kindness. He understood that the most profound changes in life often began with ordinary actions and genuine human connection. For Clara and her brother, the experience had transformed their approach to life and the ranch. They had learned to communicate openly, face challenges with confidence, and support one another in ways they never had before. The broken gate that had brought John into their lives became a symbol, not just of physical repair, but of the repair and growth in their relationship, their responsibilities, and their understanding of what it meant to face life together. Over time, the lessons they learned became habits. They developed a stronger sense of teamwork, managed the ranch more effectively, and approached problems with a calm and thoughtful mindset. Mistakes were no longer sources of fear or frustration. They were opportunities to learn, grow, and strengthen the trust between them. The ranch itself flourished as a result, not only in its physical condition, but also in the sense of harmony and cooperation that filled the land. One morning, months later, Clara and her brother stood at the gate that had first brought John into their lives. It was strong, secure, and well-maintained, a reflection of their hard work and growth. Clara touched the gate lightly and smiled, thinking back to the day she had first asked for help. She realized that the simple act of reaching out had changed everything, teaching lessons about courage, trust, and the importance of human connection. Her brother joined her, his expression thoughtful. "It's strange," he said, "how one small request can have such a big impact. I feel like we've learned so much, not just about the ranch, but about ourselves and each other." Clara nodded, feeling a sense of gratitude and peace. "We have," she said. "And we've learned that strength comes from knowing when to ask for help, when to trust, and when to support each other. That lesson will stay with us forever." As John rode by on his way back to his own ranch, he waved, and they waved back. The connection that had begun with a simple act of kindness remained strong, a quiet reminder that life's most meaningful moments often started with small, thoughtful actions. And in the fields, fences, and gates of their ranch, Clara and her brother carried the lessons of trust, growth, and resilience, ready to face whatever challenges the future might bring. The broken gate was no longer just a gate. It was a symbol of transformation, of human connection, and of the power of empathy and guidance. It had brought a rancher, a sister, and a brother together in a journey that taught them all about courage, patience, and the quiet strength that comes from supporting one another. And as the sun set behind the hills, casting a warm golden glow across the fields, they knew that life, no matter how challenging, could always be met with hope, trust, and determination.